All right. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Ferg Chat. This week I have a very special guest. Give it up for my man, Earl Skakel. He is here today, 2 weeks removed from the roast of Ric Flair. I know he's got some comedy shows he's been going on out in LA. He's also Barry Jelly on the Adult Swim's The Jellies and on HBO Max. He runs his own podcast, Inappropriate Earl. He's got a gig coming up August 6th. So how are you doing today, Earl?
I'm good. Just had a show at the Comedy Store late last night.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It
Good
was a long
reception,
day.
crowd?
I was great. It's completely sold out, and I was all day yesterday. I was at an XPW show, which is wrestling promotion that's California based. They do some East Coast shows, but not too many. And their angle is the violence, like death matches and just really ultra aggressive wrestling. It's like ECW with no budget and more violence. So it was a long day yesterday.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, I haven't seen much of it, but from what I've seen, it can get pretty rough and pretty ruthless sometimes. Isn't that we were talking about it yesterday? That's where they had the Vic Grimes and New Jack scaffold match, correct?
Yeah, it's same owner, Rob Black, and I was at that match actually. It was at the what was it, the Olympic Auditorium,
Oh wow,
which
really?
is,
How close were you? Where are your seats at?
I mean, they were pretty close just because with XPW, there were never really a lot of people, so you could move around. Like there's just a
Yeah.
few hundred people, and the Olympic Auditorium had probably sat, uh, you know, maybe like 3 or 4 thousand.
Okay.
So a couple hundred people in there, you could pretty much move wherever you want. And like last night, there's at this place, an outdoor ring in Pomona, and there's probably maybe 200 people. So you can move around. So pretty
Okay.
close to answer your question.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um,
That's cool. So, where were you in relation from when the guy fell? How close were you to that? Like, were you right there by it? Were you on the other side of the ring?
I mean, I was on the side of the ring where he ended up falling, and
Oh shit.
um, I mean, probably a couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
I was, because I never really stayed in one place too long. I would move around just to see different views. Like last night, I was uh, positioned by the entrance for the wrestlers. And then at one point, my buddy's like, "Hey, I have an extra front row ticket." So I just moved to that. And
Heck yeah.
then I went back to the railings position because it's kind of neat to be right where they come out.
Oh yeah,
And
that's where I actually sat for Ric Flair's last match. I was right there on the side. And when you go back and watch
yeah, yeah.
pay-per-view, I was one of the guys that he got into the altercation with on the side. And you can like see me
Oh,
like
great.
yeah, you can see me leaning over the crowd, flipping them off and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, I know. I mean, XPW shows are pretty fun to go to. Like, it's a lot of the same people, so you get to know like the referees. I mean, the two referees have been there since the beginning, so
Yeah.
they know your name, and like you see a lot of the same fans,
Heck yeah.
and it's different wrestlers now just because the the physical beatings these guys and girls take is unbelievable. There's no way you could do this for 20 years.
Oh yeah. I've
They,
seen
they had a no, they had a guy named Supreme when I first started going in the early 2000s. He was this bald dude, five, maybe 5'8". He's close to 400 pounds, but he was pretty athletic. So he would do the really violent matches.
heck
And
yeah.
now they have this new guy, or he's not new, but he's basically the new version of Supreme Schlack.
Yeah.
who is pretty in shape, but he's probably about 5'8", 5'9". He had
Yeah.
a match last night with this. It was kind of fun to watch this older dude named the Necro Butcher, and it was a pretty violent match. But the match of the night was the female match. They had a three-way female death match, and I'd never seen one before. You know, usually women don't do that stuff, and
Yeah.
it was pretty amazing to watch women do it. Like, it was really violent. I mean, light bulbs, barbed wire, baseball bats wrapped in barbed wire,
Heck yeah. Yeah.
baseball bats with nails.
The closest I've been for
And
something like that was we went to GCW earlier in the year
right.
when we came to Atlanta. And I've seen, like Dark Side of the Ring, and where they show like CZW, and I've seen some stuff from them, and I've seen like the tournament of death clips where they put like they got the damn like circle spike or whatever, and they're like driving the circle spike into the guy's head. So I mean, yeah, I agree with you though. It takes a lot to go out there and some of that crazy shit, man. Let's take some of that forced brutality.
I mean, it's just hard to explain. I mean, even in the first match, my buddy, his name's Dirty Ron McDonald, and he dresses like Ronald McDonald. He was facing this pretty big dude, and even for the first match, they just got right into it. I mean, he's bleeding probably 40 seconds into the match. So it's, I mean, they really deliver the goods. And probably the funniest wrestler, I think his name is Santana Jackson. And his shtick is he goes out there as Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah, I saw that on your story. I was actually going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
He's really good. Like, he's a good wrestler.
Yeah.
So he would like get a guy in a headlock and then start moonwalking and DDT him. He did the thing like the Undertaker does, where he gets on the top rope and he walks the rope with the guy's arm, and he, instead of walking the rope, he moonwalked on it. Like, it was pretty impressive. He reminded me of like Orange Cassidy, how he's a great wrestler, but he gets stuck in the humor stuff. So it was like, so it was a long day. So I'm still kind of tired from it, but I had to leave the last match, which was too bad because Brian Cage was the last match.
Oh, really?
They get some big names, and I saw him walk in when I was leaving, and I was just curious as to how a mainstream wrestler would do an XPW, because I'm pretty sure, I don't have any proof, but I'm pretty sure he was like, hey, I'm not bleeding. You're not putting thumbtacks on me, but
Yeah.
I'll, because he's their heavyweight champion. So, and Taya Valkyrie was there. She's the women's champ. She's John Morrison's wife.
Okay.
So she had a pretty violent match, but she didn't bleed either. I'm sure the bigger wrestlers were like, we're not doing the wacky shit.
Yeah. Now, to kind of switch the subject a little bit, I want to get to know a little bit more about you. So, like, I know you do the voice acting, and you've done like the Jeff Ross roast battle, things like that. Do you prefer the voice acting over the getting out of there in front of real people and doing the stand up, or what? I mean, what's your preference when it comes down to it all?
Well, I can't stand Jeff Ross, so I don't like working with him. But I mean, I like both, really. I don't have a preference. I mean, nothing beats live comedy,
Yeah.
but voice acting pays so well. Like,
Does it?
you can literally make what you make in a weekend of, say, 7 comedy shows at a club in 1 hour doing voice acting for the better gigs. So
Now, how'd you find out about the jellies? Was that like somebody from the show got in touch with you, something your agent found, or how's that? How does a role like that fall into your lap?
Well, I have no representation, so I get everything on my own. I've never had a manager or an agent. So I was at roast battle one night, and in the early days to roast battle, it was the Wild West. I mean, it's hard to explain to people. It was like Jerry Springer meets Yo Mama meets Wild and Out
Yeah.
meets um, it was just in All in the Family, which is one of my first comedy influences.
Okay.
Um, the '70s sitcom where it was pretty a lot of racial humor, but it was done in such a well-written way. Even though the things the main character Archie Bunker was saying were awful, um, he really delivered them in almost a likable way. So
Yeah. Do you feel
uh,
like that's kind of lost in television today and comedy in general? Just like the way some jokes are written and the way some things come across. Like if they were written better, maybe they'd be, better publicly accepted, things like that.
I really do think the humor. If you watch All in the Family, and you're so young, and people your age, and they would really see how good television was written back in the day. There's other shows out there like The Jeffersons, which was basically a black All in the Family.
Yeah.
That was a great show. Were written by the same people. Um, it was actually a spin-off of All in the Family. It was Archie's black neighbor, and then they got their own show. It's a show I always try and turn people on, and called The White Shadow, and it was a um, TV show about a white coach coaching in the ghetto, and it was really ahead of its time because it wasn't just a comedy; it was a drama. But
Yeah.
we like every episode had maybe 20-25% jokes in it. So and the jokes, this is the late '70s, early '80s. They covered a lot of groundbreaking topics like abortion, rape. Had one of my favorite TV episodes ever is when the white coach took two black players to this racist country club, um, and it was just fat. It was just the most well-written episode of weaving how racist this country club was with humor around it. With the black.
Nope, we froze there for a second.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
So yeah, I mean, it was just and the movie, and pretty much everyone's seen it, even people your age. Blazing Saddles
Yeah.
uh,
That's a good
was
one.
another movie that blended race and homophobic and sexy or sexist jokes, but they were so well written. Whereas today it's just more shock humor and um, bad words just to say them.
Yeah.
So instead of, back then, if you look at the Dean Martin roast, that's another example of, they were some of the awful jokes, like in terms of the harshness of them.
Mhm.
But, at that time, all the people roasting each other knew each other. So it was done
Yeah.
out of love. Whereas today, if you look at most roasts you see, um, they're let's just get these 12 people together. They don't know this guy or girl, like at
What's
least the
that
Flair
about?
roast. Like, yeah, like the Flair roast, obviously all the wrestlers on the roast knew Rick. And even though I think the 6 comics on the roast didn't know Rick, we were all huge wrestling fans.
Yeah.
So we did it in that old school way of really at the end of the day, we're paying tribute to him. So, it's a big difference between today's humor and the humor of like when I was your age growing up watching.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild, man. That's awesome. That's very insightful. Like, I definitely feel even though I'm only 25 years old, when I watch some stuff, I definitely feel like the writing has changed in a lot of ways, and that some things were better written maybe they'd come across a little bit better. Because I do follow, like, one of my favorite TV shows is actually the Golden Girls. I love the Golden Girls, man. Just
Yeah,
what?
I mean, I never really liked it, but like, that was even that show was very well written.
Yeah,
Um, but it's also you had, especially B. Arthur, who was the main Golden Girl, I guess. She was a great um, comic actress, like because she came from that show right around All in the Family's time in the '70s called Maude, and so she, whereas today, if you watch a lot of sitcoms, not all but most, it's a really young actress or a young group of actors who they don't have any life experience yet, so they're just acting that way. Whereas B. Arthur and Betty White, obviously, and the other main Golden Girl, who I'm drawing a blank on, but she was actually my favorite because she was like the sexy one, like she was like the horny older woman.
yeah,
Um, they had. I'm not saying everyone has to be 60 years old to be funny, but they were great comic actresses because they had
yeah.
such an amazing lifetime of experiences to draw from. Whereas if you watch a sitcom on Fox or wherever, and you have a 23-year-old lead actress or actor, like they don't have any life experience. Like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of hokey, hacky material they've memorized.
I was gonna say the funniest people are people like me who have it kind of rough. You go through shit at a young age. Yeah, and you
Oh
figure it.
yeah, I mean there are. I had a ex-girlfriend from my past who, shit, at 19, she had been, assaulted several times and, uh, adopted and treated like crap by both sets of parents. And she
Yeah,
was actually pretty funny because she's a comic. Uh, she at 19, 20, 21 had the life experiences of someone 40,
yeah,
uh, which is sad, but, she used that to craft her character of being the outcast. It's even at that young age. So it's not 100% for um, every young kid doesn't have bad experiences, but like most don't, which is good in life, but in comedy, not so much.
yeah. Now I know what you mean. It feels like it reminds me of like what my mom always used to tell me when I was growing up. Like it's not about what happens to you; it's about how you come out of it. You know how it makes you as better as a person and whatnot. I
Yeah,
like.
like I'm 53, so like I've experienced every level of emotion you can in life. Death of my parents, death of family members. I mean, we just lost two stand-up comics in 2 weeks in LA. They're both very popular guys. Um,
Who
so
passed? If you don't mind me
uh,
asking.
a Jack Knight, a very funny comic, a couple
I
weeks
think I, I
ago.
think I know who that is. Has he
Yeah,
done a couple specials?
yeah, he's been on TV a fair amount. 28 years old, just ended his life, and then a couple days ago, Teddy Ray, very, very, very funny comic. He passed away of natural causes just because he was a little overweight and,
Yeah.
um, just just far too young to pass. But they were both good dudes. Like the people who don't know them would have loved them because they were both very funny.
Yeah. Now, kind of pick up the mood just a little bit. What's LA life like? I've never been out to LA. I've furthest west I've ever been was I went to Vegas earlier this year. Got to take a little trip. What is the land of Karens and all that as I hear called? How goes that on a day-to-day basis?
So I think if you really want to know what LA is like, watch the Guns N' Roses video, "Welcome to the Jungle."
Yeah.
It's the most accurate portrayal of the city. Like, um, it's a small town guy in Axel getting off the bus and instantly being hustled by street freaks and whatnot. So there's a lot of good things about the city. There's bad things. It's a huge, huge city.
Yeah.
Uh, you kind of have to have a car to get around. It's not like New York where you can walk. You know, in New York, you could do like, you know, 7 comedy shows and walk to them all. In
Yeah.
LA, you can't do 7 shows and you got to drive to them all because
Yeah, I got you.
it's a very spread out city. So, but it's great. I mean, I like I live in a park called West Hollywood, which is very central. A lot of nightclubs and uh, restaurants and gyms, and then there's more uh, less crowded parts of it. You know,
Yeah.
the hills. So there's something for everyone here. Like I always tell people, whatever you're into, it's here. Uh, you know, whether you're straight, gay, bi, trans, you know, black, white, Hispanic, you know, there's neighborhoods and restaurants that specifically cater to your ethnicity or, you know, sexual orientation. And so it's a pretty cool city. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
That's cool. Do you
Yeah,
with you living in West Hollywood, do you still like do you run into a bunch of famous people? Do you still get starstruck? Like,
not really. I mean, I run into famous people every day. Like, you know, you go to the gas station, you see Jim Carrey. It's like, oh, that's Jim Carrey. Um, you go to, was I walking my dog a couple weeks ago, and I saw Dolph Ziggler, the wrestler, just jogging. You know, you go to a gym, you'll always see someone famous at the gym. You know, you go out to dinner, obviously, especially by me, because there's a lot of well-known restaurants. There's multiple famous people there. You go to the nicer shopping malls, you know, celebrity shop too. So, but I don't really get I was more starstruck seeing all these wrestlers from the '80s 2 weeks ago than
yeah.
I've ever been seeing like Jim Carrey or whatever.
No, I got. Is that now? Just question for you: is that just because you've been more into wrestling overall in your life, or you know?
Well, I think it's because I do comedy every night. I'm around. Um, I'm literally always around someone famous.
Yeah.
You know, like last night there was um, several famous comics who went on at the Comedy Store. So it's like, to me, they're almost like coworkers. Um, whereas wrestling, you know, they're not coworkers because I don't wrestle. So
Yeah.
it's like neat for me to, you know, just walking around backstage at the Flair roast or at his last match, um, you know, to see guys like The Undertaker and Diamond Dallas Page and even some of the older guys who you probably wouldn't know, but a guy like Magnum TA,
Oh yeah, I
who,
met
you
I
know,
got to meet Magnum TA out in Spartanburg. He came out for
yeah, he's a great, he was like, to put him in reference, he was like my John Cena, you
yeah.
know, like the good guy, the permanent good guy, who would always be like a foil to Ric Flair or Nikita Koloff. Uh,
Yeah, I got you.
you know, I mean, that's the only disappointment of the weekend was I was hoping that the 3 guys I really wanted to meet were Nikita Koloff, Sid, and Sting. But, you know, to meet Ricky Morton was pretty amazing because he was in a lot of matches that, you know, I saw as a kid. And so, like, to me, pro wrestlers are on a higher pedestal for me than comics or actors I see every day in LA.
Yeah. So like, what's your group of friends look like then? Are they are they fellow comedians? Are they actors? Like, do you try to communicate more with wrestlers? Like, who's in Earl's group?
I mean, I don't really have, you know, since I'm so busy doing comedy, like I don't go to the movies with friends. I don't have time. Like I don't, um, you know, comics, I guess, you know, because that's who I'm primarily around the most.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, when I'm doing voiceover work, it's you know, it tends to gravitate towards, you know, obviously not hanging out, but, you know, working with voiceover actors and, um,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and they're a weird bunch.
I know you're an incredibly busy person. I meant more in like, not to get too personal, but like, everybody's got like their group that they text. Like, you hear on Conrad's podcast, to give him a shout out. He's got like his group that he texts with all his guys. Like, I was just trying to get inside. That's all.
Oh no, but I don't really text people. Like I'm so focused on comedy and voiceover stuff that I don't really even have the time to get in the text chain with a bunch of my buddies saying, "Hey, how's the pussy tonight?" or whatever. Like I'm I really don't. Like I don't
Yeah.
I text or you know um like tonight I'm judging a show at the Improv called Comic Wars, which is basically a spin-off show of Roast Battle. So I'm doing that. So I'll be around a bunch of roast type comics. There won't be very many regular people I will interact with the rest of my day. Like today is like a perfect example of most days. I'm doing a podcast with you. After I'll write some jokes or try to, and then I go to the Improv for a couple hours and hang out with roast comics and other stand-ups, and then go home. Like I don't go to nightclubs or I don't meet a group of my friends to do dinner. I don't have the time.
Yeah, he's always busy. No, I
Even
get
on a
that.
Sunday.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Because
I know.
comedy it's a full-time job. It's not, if you do it seriously, it's work. It's
Yeah.
so I love that I get to do it, and like to be passed at the Comedy Store, which is the #1 club in the world. It's pretty neat. But
Yeah.
since you're on lineups every night with famous comics and comics who will be famous, you can't really fuck around. You got to take it seriously. So, it's like being a pro wrestler, I guess. You can't really fuck around doing that stuff. You got to work out every day. You got to practice, and probably by the time you're done, you go to sleep.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. It's cool to see that even at no offense, but even at your age at 53, you still got that dedication to do it every single day, hustle through and make it work. That's awesome, man. I respect that for sure.
Well, yeah, you have to, because there's always younger comics right behind you who, if you don't work hard, they will. Or there's, even slightly older comics, but they're still younger than me. You don't work hard or you don't want to write jokes today, they will. So the motivation I would work hard anyway, but like tonight at this show at the Improv, I'll be the oldest comic in the room by probably 20 years, but I can hang with anyone. So that's
Oh, dude, you got
keeps
killer.
you hungry. Oh yeah, but there's not many rooms that I'm intimidated by in terms of I don't think I should be in this room. So like this show tonight, I don't mean this in a cocky way at all, because I'm not cocky at all. But I'm probably the best comic on this show tonight, just because I'm the oldest comic by probably 15, 20 years. So it keeps you hungry being around all the young comics, and like, oh, this guy's pretty funny, or girl, it's pretty funny, I better keep it up.
Yeah, no, I mean that's awesome, man. Like I said, I definitely respect the hustle, and I'm only 25, and aside from this, I work full time. And to be honest with you, at Ric Flair's last match, I technically wasn't even supposed to be backstage. I kind of one way or another, through some people trying to get this podcast up off the ground, I stuck my way back there to try to make some connections, and luckily I met you, so it wasn't all bad.
Yeah, no, it was the security. It got a little better when Ric Flair got back there, and then I think they had a full-time person posted up by the entrance. But like when I got there earlier, I just walked backstage, and then my buddy was like, "Do you want to pass?" I'm like, "Yeah." We were in the room where all the passes were, so he just wrote me a backstage pass. So,
That's sweet.
but yeah, but that backstage area was insane to be at. Just to be around all the wrestlers, see them talking about the matches before they went out there, like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And
Yeah,
They had that little warm up area,
I was.
to where they would practice the moves.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. To save my ass a little bit, but to not get anybody else in too much trouble, I had somebody else sneak me in. They had a backstage pass, and they got me back there. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see them, just all kind of talking and chatting, and to get to talk to some of them without, the whole autograph or area around them. Because when you can get them away from the autograph area and just talk to them like people, it's a whole different story. And it's, in my opinion, it can be a little bit more interesting.
yeah, I mean, they like that. I think they prefer it because when they have to sign hundreds of autographs, they're kind of on autopilot. I mean, they're nice, but like, they got to get, that line for Jeff Jarrett at the Saturday autograph session was like, there's probably 500 people in line, and he took every picture, shook every hand, signed every autograph. I mean, really, everyone did. Lex Luger, who's, he's another one of my 80s guys. He's in a wheelchair, and he was incredibly nice to everyone. Yeah, but it is, I think, a funner experience to meet them backstage where, I think they probably look at you or me and go, okay, well, this guy's back here, so we're equal in that sense. So we'll just talk to each other like regular humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, so no real hobbies for you, just do a lot of comedy. So, I mean, that's cool though, man.
I
Nah,
mean, I work out. I mean, that's probably the only that's probably the thing I do where I'm around regular people is I take yoga almost every day, hot yoga.
yeah.
So there's not too many comics who do that. So I'm around like other actors and, models and, 'cause the studio I go to is in a nice part of town. So it's,
Yeah.
um, most comics probably couldn't afford it, to be honest. So
I don't know why.
I'm around business,
The thought of you
I'm
doing yoga.
around I mean, it's good for my mind. So since I don't, like I've never had a drink or a drug in my life. So like when I'm depressed or whatever, I can't take something to take the edge off. I do yoga.
Yeah. I get so you've been completely straight edge your whole life. That's incredible, dude. Especially like not trying to be rude or anything, but living out in Hollywood and like in that comic atmosphere where sometimes they've been known for drugs and partying and drinking. For you to hear that, I mean, 53 years straight edge, that's dope, dude. That's awesome.
I mean, it's just habit, like once, and I've been around more coke than anyone who's done it. Like I've
Yeah.
seen every drug. I've seen people freebase in front of me. I've seen people been backstage at some pretty big concerts, and I've seen, every sex act, everything a human can do to another human. I've seen 100 times. So, um, but I was never tempted. So and I certainly wouldn't start doing drugs in my 50s. It'd be a pretty loser move.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not against them. It's like, I don't care what you do.
You do
So,
you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care what other people do. I don't judge anyone. I have my one friend. He's like a super good looking guy. He fucks more girls than any celebrity I've ever met. And I don't judge him. That's how he feels, makes himself feel good. It's more sexy as.
So yeah, so I mean, writing jokes. What is that like? Where do you try to pull from? Are you trying to pull from like politics, or because I've listened to a little bit of your comedy, but I'll be honest, not too much. But I do enjoy it. So like, where do you? I hate to use the typical question, but I guess I'm gonna go there anyways. Where do you like? What influences you when you're writing jokes?
I just force myself every day to write jokes. Like, so, I go on news sites, see what's going on in the world. I'll pull from personal experiences, like I'll try and make a joke or two about the wrestling show I was at yesterday,
Yeah,
just because it was so wild. You know, think of like the female death match I saw, and there's something there. Joke about how violent the women were, um, and then maybe make a joke about there was this guy next to me in the last match. He was passed out completely from alcohol, I guess, and when I first got there. I got there a little early, and it was super hot yesterday, but I knew I couldn't go home after. I'd have to go right to the comedy store, so I was dressed in my comedy outfit, which is usually leather pants, and I think it was 105, 110. It was really hot yesterday. So, here I am at 105-degree weather wearing leather pants, sweating bullets. So, stuff like that, it's observational humor, a lot of it, just, like driving up there, as it was getting a little darker, there was this big restaurant on the freeway, which is one of those freeway restaurants, like you see a Waffle House in the South, and it was, the name of the restaurant was Black Angus. It was a steakhouse, but the G and the sign was out. The neon was out, so it said Black Anus.
Yeah.
So there's a joke there. And then I drove by, and this is all true. A Golden Corral, and same thing in the neon sign. One of the R's was out, so it said Golden Oral. So it's funny. Maybe try and come up with something there about what kind of menu they would have.
What about hecklers?
So,
how do you deal with hecklers?
I don't really get heckled too much because I'm pretty, I'm not like super muscular or whatever, but I'm 6'1", 6'2", pretty put together, 200 pounds, dressed in leather pants and a leather jacket. So I don't really get heckled all that much. The few times I do, I've been doing comedy almost literally as long as you've been alive.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty polished. There's nothing I haven't seen in a crowd 100 times. So I'm pretty.
Come back, you fucking shut them down.
My material is okay. I don't think I'll wow anyone with, oh my God, that joke is so well written. But I'm really fast. So if the odds are I'm going to be faster than anyone in the crowd. And plus, since I'm sober, I shouldn't even say I'm sober because that would imply that I was not at one point. My mind is very clear. So I'm not a good person to heckle, but usually a heckler is, they mean well. They just want to be noticed. They're with a date. They want to, hey, I'm funnier than this guy, or they're just drunk.
Yeah, try to grab some attention, yada yada.
Yeah, and usually that's a pretty easy heckle. But some comics, the worst is when they, and it hasn't happened too much, but it has happened. You suck, because that gives me nothing to play off of. Either it's not a good comeback if I yell, no, I don't. It's then. So one time I was in the main room at the Comedy Store. It's sold out rooms, 400 people. It's a lot of people in there when it's full. And Donnell Rawlins was supposed to be on instead of me, but he didn't show up. I'm not sure what happened. So they put me on instead. And obviously there's people in the crowd who were disappointed that I'm not Donnell Rawlins, but if he doesn't show up, he doesn't show up. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
And he might have been at another gig long or whatever. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm not killing, but I'm doing really good. And this guy in the really nice section of seats, they have these booths about midway in the room that are like, you can reserve them or whatever. And there was this table full of white dudes, and they were pretty drunk. I had honed in on them as soon as I walked on stage, going, okay, they might be trouble. Because it's like a quarterback sensing a blitz. Like as soon as I get on stage, I can pretty much figure out who's going to be trouble and who's going to be cool and who's going to be no trouble at all.
Yeah.
And about 10 minutes into the set, and keep in mind, I'm doing good. It's not like I'm bombing. The guy just yells out, "You suck. Where's Donnell Rawlings?" And there you could tell there was like a little energy in the room going, okay, what's the comic going to say? And literally 2 seconds later, I'm like, he's at the intersection where I rear-ended him so I could get up here. And, the joke, obviously, he's not there because I took him out.
Yeah.
And the crowd loved it. I got basically a standing ovation. And it instantly shut the guy up because now I had the crowd on my side, which is key if you're a younger comic. If younger comics are listening to this, and I'm assuming your fan base is for your age, if you do get heckled, you have to make the crowd aware of it. Because like in a 400-person room, and when it's that full and the energy is pumping in that room, the audience in the back, they might not have even heard that guy say that. Because even though I heard it, my hearing, I have like a dog's hearing. Like I can hear anything. I can hear glasses clanking in the other room. Like I'm just so hyper focused up there. So you got to make the crowd aware that someone in the room is being rude. And then as soon as the crowd knows that, they've all paid a lot of money to be there, $20 to $40 a ticket, 2-drink minimum. So if you're on a date, it's 4 drinks. So 4 drinks at a comedy club, that's $60-70. So if you're already $100 in the hole, plus if you went to dinner beforehand, that's probably another $100 to $200. So that audience you're in front of, most of them have spent for a night out, anywhere from $100 to $300-400 in drinks and food and parking. And so they want to be entertained by the guy or girl on stage, not by another audience member. So, you have to really, it's pretty easy to turn the crowd on a heckler because the crowd wants to be on your side. The only time they're not on your side is like if I were a dick to that guy, instantly and didn't say anything funny, but like, well, fuck you, man. I'm Earl. Darnell ain't here. That's not going to get a laugh. But that's not going to get a laugh.
Oh, yeah. Not that.
It's just going to be like, oh, he's kind of a dick. And then they're on the audience member's side. So, and then you got to spend 5-10 minutes getting the crowd back. And you probably won't because now they don't like you. But to answer your original question, I don't get heckled very much.
That's good. Are there any question you a little bit more about the comic scene? Are there any comedians that like you prefer to work with, or like you just feel like they'll do a good job of warming the crowd up with you? Like anything like that? Any shout outs you want to give like that way?
Oh, I mean, at the Comedy Store, I really enjoy working with most everyone because it's like being in the NFL. It's the best of the best.
Yeah.
So, like last night, I'm on a lineup. It's all famous comics. I went on right after my friend Sam Tripoli, who's a pretty well-known comic, because he's a very successful podcaster. And, I can really follow any comic from the standpoint of I don't care what their style is. If they do all crowd work, that's fine. I'll do more material. If they're more material-based comic, I'll do more crowd work. If I'm very dry and sarcastic, so I can really follow most common standpoint of if they're high energy and wacky and running around all over the stage. It actually works for me because then I come on stage and I don't move around a lot. I talk just like I'm talking now, and the crowd kind of likes it because they're like, "Oh, this guy's really different than the last act."
Yeah.
So I'm really the only, since I come from that show Roast Battle, and not many roast battle comics are passed at the Comedy Store. It's mainly just me and Sarah Tiana,
Yeah.
maybe, and Brian Moses, obviously. But they're tough to follow because most of them aren't good comics yet. I mean, there's a few that are, but and so when I'm doing non-Comedy Store shows and I'm on a show with, say, a roast battle, like on before me, and they're doing very well, their first instinct to start roasting the crowd because that's what they know.
Yeah.
But the crowd doesn't really dig it. Like if they're bombing on stage with material and then they start doing roast jokes, the crowd's looking at them going, "We don't think you're funny, so we don't really want to be roasted by you either."
Yeah.
So then I go on stage, and since I'm well known from the show, especially in LA, they're like, "Oh, that's the guy who did really good on Roast Battle. We want him to roast us because we like him." But I don't really like roasting people. So that's really the only type of and I'll still go on after any Roast Battle comic. Believe me, they're very easy to follow, most of them. But, if it's almost, I can be super clean, I can be super dirty. So I don't mind following a dirty comic, but it definitely sets a bar. Like once the person before you goes really super dirty, the crowd kind of expects that from at least the next one or two comics. And I can do that. Or if you follow someone super, super clean, but the crowd doesn't really, they might want a little bit of dirty humor, but there is a skill to building a lineup. The booker at the Comedy Store, and really the last two bookers, they've done a really good job of going, okay, well, Earl will do well following Tripoli because Tripoli is kind of out there and he talks about conspiracy theories and all that. And Earl come on and carry the wave. And then like last night, I had to bring the guy going on after me. It was one of my good friends, Willie Hunter. He's like almost like a black David Letterman. Like he's very smart and cerebral. So he's like the perfect guy to follow me and Sam because he is kind of a combination of me and Sam. Like he doesn't delve into like the conspiracy theories and stuff, but he has like some funny jokes about like Michael Jackson being framed and all that stuff. So it's a really, last night was a great lineup to watch the formation of it. It's like a baseball lineup. You put your best hitters in the 1 to 5 spots, and then the more and then the hitters 6 through 9, you put the more maybe the ones who go for it a little more,
like
big hitters who. Yeah, I mean, you want the power hitters, like 1 through 5, and then after say 6 times, you put the hitters who they get a hit, they might strike out. So it's done very much like that.
I got you. All right. Well, I think we're going to start getting wrapped up here right now. So, any shout outs you want to give to anybody, anything like that? Any other plugs, anything like that?
I mean, I'm really easy to find on all social media. It's just my name at Earl Skakel. It's EARL SKAKEL, and I have 2 podcasts. One's called Inappropriate Earl. And that's just my own personal one, where I interview friends and fellow comics and some wrestlers, musicians. And then I also have a newer podcast. We're only, I think, I've done 13 episodes, but it's the Comedy Store podcast, where it's obviously rap based. We've interviewed Josh Barnett, who was the UFC heavyweight champ, Rocky Romero, who was in New Japan and AEW, John Morrison.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And we get some. We only do in-person interviews, so we limit right now to interviewing only wrestlers who are in the California area. But we're looking at doing Zoom and trying to get bigger names on. So and then other than that, I'm at the Comedy Store, a couple times a week. And if you like cartoons, you can watch the Jellies on 3 networks: HBO Max, Adult Swim, and the Cartoon Network. And if you like roast battle, you can go on, I think, Comedy Central. They have all my roast battles. And a TV series about stand-up comedy. I was on I'm Dying Up Here on Showtime. I think you can go on Showtime. It's free, I think. I'm not sure on that, so don't hold me to it. And I was on both seasons of I'm Dying Up Here. And I think that's about it.
All right. Cool. All right, man. Well, it's been a pleasure today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been awesome, man. It has been awesome.
Dude, always a pleasure. Let's keep in touch, and hopefully you'll come out here and see a show.
Oh yeah, hopefully I'll get on one of your podcasts here soon, something like that.
Yeah, we'll talk wrestling or something. Like, we couldn't do this right now on the Comedy Store Wrestling podcast just because where the podcast studio is. It's downstairs of the Comedy Store in the basement.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi is so bad down there that we've tried because we wanted to get like Ric Flair on to talk about the roast and all that. But
hey, if you're giving me an
Wi-Fi
excuse,
section.
if you're giving me an excuse to come to LA, say no more, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, everyone should go to the Comedy Store at least once in your life because it's the greatest club on earth by far, and it's a guaranteed good time no matter what kind of humor you like, whether you like it super clean, there's clean comics, you like it super dirty, you like a combination, there's late nights. I mean, late night at the Comedy Store, I've been to every club in the country. There's no club late night that compares to the Comedy Store. It's like a nightclub with comedy in it.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. All right, well, thanks everybody for tuning in today. We will see you guys next week.